Good evening and welcome, everyone. We are going to start our first operating budget community hearing sessions. I'm going to do a roll call and ask board members to introduce themselves. I'm going to start from this side.
All right, Pramil Suvarna, student member of the board. Excited to be here and spending a couple of hours with you guys here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Zimmerman. I'm representing District 2.
Good evening. Buenas noches. Carla Silvestre, school board member at large.
Nice to see you all. Good evening, buenas noches. Thanks for joining us on this cold evening. Grace Rivera Oven, representing District 1.
Hi, good evening. Rita Montoya at large.
Good evening, Laura Stewart, District 4. So happy to be here with you. I was over there for many years in a row, and I'm excited to be on this side tonight. Thank you.
And I'm going to go online.
Good evening, Julie. Can you hear me?
Yes. Barely.
Brenda Wolf, District 5. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. Something is going around in my house.
Ask TV to work on that.
So that was our colleague, Brenda.
Yeah, that's our colleague Brenda Wolf, and the TV will help us to improve the sound. And I'm Julie Yang, District 3, President of the Board of Education. So tonight is the first of the 2 nights that we have set aside to hear from the community on the superintendent's FY26 operating budget proposal to the Board of Education. I'm seeing some familiar faces and some new ones, and I'm eager to hear from you. Tonight's hearing will be broadcast live on television and on MCPS Media. Before we begin today's important budget hearing, I want to take a moment to highlight the board's commitment to ensure that our school remain a place of opportunity, growth, and support for all students. As always, board members are looking forward to both hearing and thoughtfully considering your input as we prepare to review and take action on the superintendent's recommendations. And this year, besides the 2 regular community hearings, we have added 3 community budget information sessions in the community, align with our value of front-facing and be in the communities. Those will be on Wednesday, January 22nd at Seneca Valley High School, and Tuesday, January 28th at Paint Branch High School, and on Thursday, January 30, we have a virtual session. All information are on MCPS website. Now, we have both in-person and virtual testimony today. Written testimony of those who sign up for tonight's hearing has been made available to the public and for the board members to review on board docs. And our next hearing in this location will be Thursday, January 23rd. So if you want to join us, there are a lot of options for the audience viewing this online. We will take tentative actions on the proposed operating budget in February. So let's begin with our first speakers.
Excuse me, can I just say something? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Just wanted to remind folks of interpretation. Si alguien necesita interpretación en español, we have the interpreters in-house. Están atrás. You can go to the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rivera Ovens. And we're going to start with our students first. You each have 3 minutes, and I'm also going to ask Grace from all of you. If it's the first time I pronounce your name, and I try to get it right. Okay. First one is Lucas Sorakovic, and then Evan Fernando, and Junie King. Please come forward. Luca, you may begin.
Good evening. My name is Lucas Sarachvich. I'm a student leader here in MCPS, as well as a candidate for the 48th SMOB. Today, I want to tell you a story about the shared experience that my peers and I face in our schools every single day. This experience is one of constant paranoia and at times a paralyzing fear that at any moment our schools could be placed under lockdown because of a gun or bomb threat. Just this past year, my school faced a combined bomb and gun threat, leaving my peers and I in the scary situation of holding up inside of our school, while at the same time hearing that a bomb was also inside of our school. This incident left many students in shock. This, combined with a similar threat at my school a year prior, in which a gun threat was called in on my school, left many students saying that this was a, quote, yearly tradition for our school. Additionally, this threat happened within the first month of my freshman year, leaving many of my peers paranoid that during the next 4 years, something tragic could happen at any moment. And as we are all aware, this is a county-wide crisis. Students from every high school, middle school, and sadly even elementary schools share in this paranoia and fear. This county-wide crisis demands a county-wide response. Addressing this issue requires a commitment in both collaboration and in funding. Central office must work with each individual school to develop a comprehensive security plan, tailored specifically to them, and this Board of Education must fund them. Last year, the number of serious incidents in our schools was a staggering 1,488. But in our schools, where we should feel safe to learn, that number is 1,488 too high. Now, I don't know if there's a definitive solution to this problem, but I know that every day, if we are not doing what some might call too much, we are not doing nearly enough. I call on this Board of Education to make safety and security a top priority, because my peers and I can't learn if we are paranoid and afraid that at any moment something tragic could happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan, you may proceed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Fernando, a sophomore at Watkins Mill High School. Thank you for giving me the honor to speak here tonight at the Board of Education. I ask that MCPS increase funds for RJ in schools. I want to tell everyone about my experience with unfair discipline and how RJ could have avoided this outcome if I had known about it or been exposed to it. I am an extreme extrovert and I love talking to my friends. So it was just like any morning in middle school when I was talking to my friends by my locker. One of my teachers, who doesn't usually let me participate in class, even though I love participating, came up to me because he was standing close by and told me that I had lunch detention for something that he had taken out of context from a conversation I was having with a friend. This alarmed me because I've never had lunch detention before, and I was confused because he didn't hear the full story of what I was trying to say. No matter how much I tried to explain the situation, he wouldn't allow me to. I later found out that he had also told the earlier classes that he had given me lunch detention as if bragging about it. This would be a place where restorative justice could have been implemented if I had known what it was, but unfortunately, I did not have a restorative justice coach or anyone similar to go to help me in this situation. Restorative justice is a set of culture-shifting practices that promote a positive, inclusive school environment. When it is used as an alternative to punitive discipline measures, students who have done something wrong are confronted about their actions. The RJ coach listens to all sides of the story, and they work with the student to repair harm and find a solution to the problem. RJ includes disciplinary measures like community service learning hours or making a presentation to explain why what they did was harmful. Suspensions aren't the answer to helping a student learn from their mistakes. Suspensions exacerbate the school-to-prison pipeline, which is a process where students who face more disciplinary action are more likely to end up in the criminal justice system. Schools that have previously included restorative justice in their culture had reduced rates of suspensions, particularly for Black students. As of October 19, 2023, Black suspensions in MCPS's focused restorative justice schools were decreased by 41%. Restorative justice should be expanded because it allows students to learn from their mistakes and take accountability without having to be punished in a way that harms their education. Unfortunately, not many students know what restorative justice is or who their restorative justice coach is, and how to use it if they find themselves in a situation where their actions aren't being thoroughly talked about. That is why I'm asking MCPS to increase funds for RJ. By doing so, MCPS ensures that all students will have equitable access to RJ and their RJ coaches. Thank you for your time and have an amazing rest of your evening.
Thank you. Junie, you may begin.
Good evening to the Board of Education, and thank you for this opportunity to advocate for myself and other students in MCPS. My name is Junie Kim, and I am the co-president at Watkins Mill for the Junior Class Council and the president of Young People for Progress. I am here to ask that MCPS to fund and expand restorative justice at each middle and high school. I would like to begin by sharing my experience with restorative justice. RJ is a set of culture-shifting practices that allow students to repair harm and improve relationships through better communication. So last year, we faced ongoing conflicts with our teacher, leading to significant tension and mental exhaustion for both students and the teacher after every class. To address this, our teacher introduced restorative justice circles every Monday, providing a platform for us to share both of our voices. We were supported by 2 restorative justice coaches who helped rebuild the relationship between students and the teacher. Had our teacher attempted to handle this situation alone, it would have not been effective, as the neutrality of RJ circles offers an unbiased perspective that guides the conversation. Without these RJ circles, our issues would have escalated into a more serious problem, hindering our ability to learn. In this situation, RJ was the key to resolving this conflict because it addressed the root of the problem, that the student felt mistreated and the teacher felt disrespected. When RJ can resolve the root of the problem, we can come to a more effective and lasting solution. This approach took away the need for short-term punitive punishments, such as suspensions and detentions, which do not address the underlying problem. RJ is proven to decrease the school-to-prison pipeline as well. The Maryland Commission on the School-to-Prison Pipeline and Restorative Practices found that schools in Maryland are too reliant on a zero-tolerance policy. This policy can make the school environment worse and might even hurt students. The Commission also found that this policy affects students of color and students with disabilities more than others, leading to an increased number of these students being removed from school and entering this criminal justice system. Investing in full-time RJ coaches is not just a matter of improving the school environment. It's about enhancing the educational experience for our students. It's about acknowledging that every student deserves a safe space to learn and grow, free from the fear of bias or discrimination. I ask MCPS for 3 things. 1, to fully fund RJ coaches as full-time positions. 2, expand the use of restorative approaches. And 3, revise the code of conduct to integrate restorative practices. This is not just an investment in our schools, but an investment in the future of our community. Thank you for your time and consideration. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call the next group of people to come forward. This will be associations and organizations. May I have Avid, Aya, and Nitish Shah, Amy Ackerber Hastings, Ranja Bell, Dr. Christine Handy, and Adrian Poon will be a video, and we'll play the last. Do we have the Youth Sports Analytical Forum here in the house? No, okay, I don't see them. So, Amy, you may begin.
Good evening, President Yang and the Board of Education, Dr. Taylor, and MCPS staff. My name is Amy Ackerberg Hastings. I serve MCCPTA as the Central Area Vice President for the Churchill, Richard Montgomery, Poolesville, Rockville, and Wooten clusters, and I am the parent of an RM junior. Our 5 clusters thank MCPS for the effort it put into public outreach related to its fiscal year 2026 operating budget request. The budget summary spreadsheet and the exhibits that went live on Monday have been particularly helpful. I would like to highlight 2 communication issues for consideration in future community engagement. First, perhaps because the budget summary spreadsheet is so clear and easy to use, it's led advocates to think only about the new spending that is listed there rather than to examine the whole $3.6 billion picture. It sounds like MCPS and BOE spent time on the base budget in Tuesday's work session, but I'd like to see clear and well-organized explanations brought to the public earlier and more often. After all, even if it's mostly guaranteed through maintenance of effort, the base budget comprises 92.7% of the operating budget requests that you all are asking us to go to County Council and support. Second, some of the descriptions in the budget summary spreadsheet assume that all stakeholders are familiar with the background and rationale for line items. As one example, Magruder High School's request for renaming is rooted in discussions that began in 2019 about buildings named for enslavers and in the 2022 revision to policy FFA. Many families were not in the school system then, and those of us who have been around could use some help with disseminating information about context. It does seem to me that MCPS's requests for increased funding are reasonable and realistic. In particular, a full complement of special education teachers and full-time paraprofessionals is desperately needed throughout the county. I've seen how staffing shortages, combined with the increased frequency and complexity of student mental health needs, have chewed up experienced principals, prevented students with severe issues from getting the supports they need, and disrupted the education of entire classes. And even though I can't remember my 11th grader ever spending a year in MCPS in which there was not a reorganization of central office, I am optimistic that implementing the cross-functional leadership teams will streamline chains of command, professional development, administrative requirements, and pedagogical practices for school administrators, teachers, and staff. However, I have additional concerns to share as I look ahead to going with MCCPTA to advocate for MCPS with the County Council. First, MCPS expects the central office reorganization to do a lot of heavy lifting, but we've been presented with panaceas many times before. Where in the base budget should stakeholders expect to observe concrete improvements in the efficiency of daily operations and in holistic student learning? How can we be certain there will be follow-through and teamwork rather than domain guarding and infighting? Second, since last spring's bruising fight over $30 million, I've been looking unsuccessfully for a plain language conception of what it actually costs to operate a school system of this size and with these aspirations. Once spending enters maintenance of effort, what is the accountability and who is auditing the whole? Can we come up with a model that conveys to families this is what it takes in one school to ensure that your child has access to a world-class pre-K to 12 education? Third, how can MCPS and advocates work together to assess long-term prospects for state and federal funding? Fourth, I'll keep pushing for the development of partnerships between county departments and agencies, nonprofits, and individual schools. Twin Brook Elementary School illustrates how increases in social services staffing are typically piecemeal, incremental, and part-time. And finally, I have been thinking recently about how MCPS has yet to hire a permanent director of maintenance operations. How many other essential departments are still making do without leadership and vision? In closing, I appreciate the size and support the scope of MCPS's FY26 operating budget request. I know that these hearings will surface long lists of additional specific, urgent issues that our students, teachers, staff, and administrators are facing every day. What I hope you take away from my testimony is a sense of the tools MCPS stakeholders will need to authentically and accurately advocate on behalf of full funding for this budget. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much. Raja Bell, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Ms. Yang, Ms. Stewart, and Mr. Suvarna, it's great to see you all again. My name is Rajan Bell. I'm a junior at Wheaton High School, and I serve as the Outreach and Campaigns Officer for my school's chapter of Young People for Progress. And tonight, on behalf of Young People for Progress, I urge MCPS leadership to expand its countywide restorative justice programs through increased funding. This issue has become deeply personal to me throughout my years as a student. In middle school, I had a friend who I'll refer to as L. She was the type of person who was very kind, loyal, and caring. Just an overall everything you'd want in a friend. Unfortunately for her, her home life was quite challenging, and it hurt witnessing the strain it put on her ability to positively engage with our school. She frequently got into fights with peers, conflicts with teachers and administration, and faced disciplinary action as a result. The school relied on punitive measures such as suspensions to address her behavior, which often led to her missing class for days at a time. Though we both eventually graduated, her behavior only continued into high school, where she continued to get into fights with her peers, teachers, and struggle to form stable bonds within her school community. Eventually, this led to her being kicked out of her school and its respective magnet program, which is unfortunate. While her circumstances outside of school had influenced her behavior, had there been a strong, well-implemented, and well-funded restorative justice program at our middle school, perhaps my friend's outcome could have been different. Restorative justice, while not a one-size-fits-all solution, has proven to be effective. According to an MCPS study of the restorative justice calls made in between the 2022 to 2023 school year, 81% of students, which is 710 out of 800 and I believe it was 23, did not repeat the offense that the call was initiated for. And in other school districts, public school districts in Pittsburgh, Denver, and other U.S. cities have seen decreased suspension rates thanks to restorative justice being successfully implemented, which is why I believe it's so important to continue the funding of these programs. But how exactly would increased funding for restorative justice look like? In most schools, there is at least one restorative justice coach, and while this is more manageable in elementary and middle schools, at the high school level, these restorative coaches are responsible for hundreds, if not thousands, of students each day. Similarly, there are only 8 full-time restorative specialists, and those are only 8 people responsible for the 160,000 plus students that we have within our school system. By increasing the amount of restorative coaches at each school, and also looking into increasing the amount of restorative specialists responsible for all the students in the county, we as a school system and community would better be able to support our students. Additionally, please consider funding a full-time restorative justice coach at each school. Most restorative justice coaches are also teachers who must juggle the responsibility of teaching students, preparing them for exams and tests, while if they're also a restorative justice coach, they must handle student conflicts and behavioral issues. By funding a full-time restorative justice coach, unaffected by the duties of teaching at each school, students can expect better support from their restorative coaches and build better rapport with them. Continuing to invest in our school restorative justice programs is paramount to building and nurturing the culture of positivity, safety, and uplifting that MCPS hopes to build. Once again, I'm Rajan Bell, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can we play the tape? Dr. Handy, forgot. Dr. Handy, next is you. Almost skipped.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. As we enter the operating season, budget season, I recognize your immense responsibility in making decisions that will shape how Montgomery County Public Schools allocates resources to align with educational priorities, meet student needs, and work within the constraints of available funding. Tonight's hearing allows community to share insights and address concerns regarding the superintendent's proposed budget. I represent the administrators of MCPS, school leaders, central office staff, and business and operations leaders who are deeply committed to ensuring students have the environment, resources, and supports necessary for a first-class system. These professionals are at the heart of our school system, working tirelessly to meet the district's vision and strategic goals. The budget is always a challenge, As with every new superintendent, there is the inevitable conversation around the R word, reorganization. Reorganizations often bring sweeping changes, including shifts in staffing, redefined roles, and adjustments to how work is structured. While Dr. Taylor has introduced a new vision for services to schools, a pattern persists. Central services staffing often bears the brunt of these changes. Dr. Taylor's presentation on the operating budget highlighted that MCPS employs 2,800 individuals in central services, with more than 400 positions added since 2019. This initially led some to believe these additions heavily involved administrators, but the data tells a different story. Of the 548 positions added since 2019, only 58, approximately 9%, were administrators. Despite this, MCAP members were or are disproportionately affected by the proposed budget cuts. I understand the need to identify efficiencies and enhance school services, but we must remember that MCPS is a school system, not a system of schools. Central services are integral to providing adequate support to schools and students and staff. So, key concerns and recommendations. Reclassification and position changes. The proposed budget includes changes that elevate some position and downgrades others. MCPS has established regulations for reclassification and reconstitution of positions, but these processes have not been followed. This is concerning and needs immediate attention. Transportation and facilities reorganizations. The proposed reorganization of transportation and facilities divisions impacts our members. We have contract language related to reorganization. We need detailed information about these changes to assess their implications on our staff and operations. Eliminated positions. As positions are eliminated, ensuring fair processes that protect staff is imperative. Many of these employees have dedicated their entire careers to MCPS. Abrupt changes without proper consultation, preparation, and support leaves them feeling blindsided. Historically, when positions are cut, the work remains. This creates an unsustainable burden on the remaining staff. I urge you to ensure that tasks previously managed by eliminated positions are either reassigned thoughtfully or discontinued to avoid overloading other employees. Board members, please ask, where is the work going? Special education and sustainability. I'm particularly concerned about the potential elimination of positions in special education, an area of significant need, and the disbanding of the Division of Sustainability and Compliance. Given the board's adoption of a sustainability policy in 2022, maintaining resources in this area is critical as utility costs rise. So while I have raised concerns, I also wish to highlight aspects of the budget that I appreciate. I appreciate the superintendent's vision of differentiated financial support for schools based on their unique populations and needs. I appreciate the addition of security positions with hopes that elementary schools will receive further consideration. I appreciate the elimination of TPT paraeducators and the inclusion of positions to better support special education services. And I especially appreciate the tentative agreement on salaries and compensation, including a 3.25% increase and a step for all eligible employees. In closing, I ask that you carefully consider the impact of these proposed changes on the people who dedicate their lives to this school system. Your decisions affect not only the position themselves, but also the individuals and students who rely on their support. I thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Handy. Now may we place the tape from OCADC.
OCADC is a chapter of OCA National, a 50-year-old nonprofit dedicated to advancing the social, political, and economic well-being of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. As the Montgomery County Board of Education begins reviewing Superintendent Taylor's 2026 recommended operating budget, we want to offer our services as a community resource, especially when it involves decisions regarding curriculum about our community. And we respectfully request increased funding for the inclusion of AAPI curriculum and teacher professional development.
My name is Adrienne Poon, and I am on the board of OCA Greater Washington, D.C. OCA D.C. is in strong support of the Montgomery County Board of Education to include funds in the budget to support both developing curriculum to teach Asian Pacific American history in Maryland schools, as well as funds to train teachers to teach this curriculum. Stories in our communities have largely been invisible, and the lack of understanding is a major factor towards the resurgence of anti-Asian hate. These hate incidents rose by nearly 150% nationally since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. The roots of anti-Asian hate are systemic and deeply embedded, yet the API experience has long been invisible in school curriculums. Nearly 13% of incidents were reported from school-age youth, suggesting that anti-Asian racism may begin at earlier ages. In particular, bullying of Asian American students can lead to significant impacts on psychological health, well-being, self-esteem, and development. Having personally experienced racially motivated bullying as a high school youth, I felt incredibly isolated growing up, especially in school systems that did not teach about the history and experiences of people from our communities. What I learned through self-education was often traumatizing, without having the opportunity for discussion or opportunities to learn about the many positive community contributions to American society over 400 years. On learning about the Chinese Exclusion Act, I was horrified that there had been a law that legally excluded people of my ethnicity from this country. On a trip to Ellis Island during middle school, I saw a shack, and when I read the story behind it, I learned how 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly interned into camps under horrible conditions. In high school, one of my teachers even integrated the Fu Manchu racist caricature into the day's history lesson, using an accent mocking Chinese people while teaching. These experiences motivated me as an adult to engage with OCA-DC and the API community in advocacy around anti-Asian hate and promoting inclusion of API history in schools. Having grown up in a system that did not teach this history, I am here today to advocate for a different, more diverse experience for the next generation of youth. An expanded curriculum to include the history of contributions of multiple communities in the U.S., including the APA community, would be a positive benefit to reflect the diversity of communities living in Maryland and create greater sensitivity to diverse experiences from a young age, which may lead to longer-term positive impacts, such as reductions in stereotyping, bullying, and hate incidents. OCA-DC therefore requests favorable support to fund APA history curriculum and development and teacher training. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before I go to board members for comment, I would like we have several MCPS staff, including our superintendent, joining us tonight. I would like them to introduce themselves, starting with our superintendent.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm joined on the dais this evening with my Chief of Staff, Essie McGuire, and I'm going to actually pass things off to our Chief Financial Officer, Yvonne Alfonso-Windsor, and we can go down the line if you all would introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Yvonne Alfonso-Windsor, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you for being here. Carly.
Hi, good evening. Carly Thompson, Acting Budget Director.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Dana Edwards, Chief of District Operations.
Good evening, all. Rob Riley, Deputy Chief of Finance.
Hello, everyone. Tom Clausing, Executive Director of the Office of Finance.
And we're also fortunate enough to have a handful of other folks in the audience joining us this evening.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm going to go to board members for comments. Let's go from my right-hand side. Everyone can have a comment and one question this round. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for everyone for coming tonight, especially the students. I wanted to talk about the Young People for Progress request for funding the restorative justice coaches and specialists. And could we just review if we are keeping that study in this budget? Is there any extra funds for restorative justice in general, including trainings? And then I also wanted to make a comment about Amy Ackerberg's comment about the presentation of the budget. So we talk about starting with a clean budget, right? Which means we're looking at everything and building up. And so I don't know if that's something we can think about, presenting, not just the additions and the subtractions, but also in some way representing the base budget, since we are looking from a zero-based budget. And so that's all I have. Thank you again.
Thank you to everyone for being here. I know it's chilly out. I think there might even be some snow falling somewhere, so I appreciate everyone coming. Again, especially our students, just as Ms. Stewart said as well. I wanted to just address two testimonies that were here today that touched on security at the elementary school level, which I know is an issue that gets brought up time and time again, and a lot of folks in the community don't feel like it's fully addressed. So I just want to remind folks that on the superintendent's budget, there is a line item for elementary school security, which is new, at least in the time that I've been here. So at this time, it looks like there are 35 proposed FTEs by Dr. Taylor that would go to elementary schools in the discretionary items section. I know we haven't addressed that yet in a work session, but that will be coming up. So I just wanted to let you know that is in there. And I do hear you, Dr. Handy, about expanding that number. And so if there is a magic number that you have, I'm sure we would love to know more about that as well if you'd like to follow up. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to go on this side of the dais to see if there's any question. Ms. Rivera.
I don't have a question. I just, two comments, because I know we have a lot more testimony, and it is a school night for our folks who are here from Watkins Mill and other schools. Just thanking you for your leadership and for coming forward and for testifying tonight. I think, we're doing things right if you guys are being active and asking for some of the things. But I just wanted to let you and everybody else know that we really looked at every cent and every penny in this budget. And I think that the team and Dr. Taylor and the board have been very diligent in making sure, as think one of the things that Dr. Taylor said the other day is that we are actually to a level of functionality when it comes especially to a lot of our most vulnerable students in our system, when it comes to special ed, that we actually have what is functional, which is something that we haven't had before. So a lot of those things with, with special education, making sure that we have full-time folks, paraeducators who do special education actually get differential pay, just so many things with our EML populations and so on. And just to put it in perspective, I don't think people, we are a huge system. We have 211 schools. We have 25,000 employees, but we also have part-time employees. Remind me, Dr. Taylor, how many?
Close to 10,000.
Right. So we have 25,000 plus employees full-time, close to 10,000 part-time employees. So just to give you an idea, it's about $800 million in healthcare that
is correct.
Right? Which is about 25% of our budget. So I hear, I hear you all and we appreciate it, but I just want you to know that we're being very diligent. Public safety is one of those issues that we know that we're working on and we're moving in the right direction. But, and I just want to say how grateful I am that we have a very engaged community that gives your time to be away from your family and your children and your husbands and wives and significant others to be able to come and advocate, which is what makes this county so special and such a great place to raise children. But I want you to know that we have a great staff and that we are truly, truly, truly doing our best. So thanks again for coming.
Ms. Silvestri.
Just no comments, no questions. Just thank you all for being here tonight. I truly appreciate hearing your perspective based on your everyday experiences in our schools. Thank you.
Mrs. Zimmerman.
I also want to echo thank you everyone for being here. I also really appreciate in testimony when you add those personal touches and bring those connections back. I think that really helps drive home some of your points. So I really appreciate how much thought and care has gone into that testimony. I do have a question. Could we see our overall costs and the personnel associated with restorative justice, like what we're already spending, including our stipended positions? And then as well as a projected cost for one full-time restorative justice coach at each middle and high school. Thank you.
Mr. Silvana.
Just wanted to say thank you to all the students that came out. We know that it's a school night. We appreciate you. Thank you to the people from Young People for Progress for coming out and sharing your thoughts, and know that we're taking it all into consideration as we look at this budget. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to call the next group of people to come forward. These are our cluster representatives. So first one will be Evelyn Chung, Charles Swain, Jonathan Thiessen, Junhua Liu, Hannah Donat, Rachel Starcup, and then Harriet St. Jarrett. All right. Evelyn, you may begin.
Members of the Board of Education and Dr. Taylor, my name is Evelyn Chung, and I'm speaking today as the Vice President of Education for the Montgomery County of PTAs. In the coming months, you'll be hearing from MCC-PTA cluster coordinators, committee chairs, and community members on a myriad of issues. I wish to draw your attention to the individual testimony of one of our tech committee members, Joel Schwartz, on important issues of data privacy and management. However, I will be focusing on what the board has called the main thing, teaching and learning. The operating budget is an opportunity to advance our shared mission, providing an equitable and excellent education for all children in Montgomery County. However, disparities in educational quality persist, particularly impacting Black, Hispanic, and farm students in under-resourced schools. Only 1/3 of students are proficient in math, with even worse outcomes in literacy and science. With not much better outcomes in literacy and science, and the proficiency rates are even lower for high-need populations. These inequities have long-term consequences, including costly remediation and limited career pathways. To address these challenges, we urge the board to fully fund the budget while prioritizing 3 key areas. First, we need high-quality, research-based instructional materials. We support MCPS's investments in vetted ELA math and science curricula. Externally reviewed materials may appear to have higher costs, but are more effective and cost-efficient, unless you want our children learning from PowerPoint slides and free websites. We also support open source materials in some cases, but warn the board that they should ask for an apples-to-apples comparison of the cost of printing materials, creating assessments, and adding the aligned interventions and enrichment for ESOL, special education, and gifted students. Sometimes open source is not cheaper. In addition, the board should ask why MCPS is purchasing intervention materials for elementary school when we already have CKLA, which has materials that can be used for extra support and should be reinforced, and when Really Great Reading was rolled out only a few years ago. In many cases, there is no time for differentiation, which must be addressed before buying materials that will never be used. What I Need or win time should be mandatory in all elementary schools. In middle school, MCPS should wait until it selects its new middle school ELA curriculum before purchasing intervention materials that are not aligned to the curriculum. Second, we need ongoing professional development and coaching. Without proper training, even the best materials will fail to deliver results. The cross-functional teams are a great start, but with the Office of School Support and Improvement instead of the Office of Teaching and Learning in the lead, we risk having disparate implementation of the instructional vision. We could end up with 14 fiefdoms doing 14 different things in our county. We should have the instructional experts lead the cross-functional teams if we hope to change the status quo. And finally, we need reasonable class sizes. Teachers cannot implement Dr. Taylor's visions without smaller class sizes in schools, especially at schools with high farms, ESOL, and special education populations. We support Dr. Taylor's formula tying funding to these poor populations, which is how the Maryland Blueprint funding is allocated. We also support the increase in special education and ESOL staff, but note that even with the increased ESOL staffing, the teacher-to-student ratio does not meet the recommended ratios of the Cal report. And finally, transparency and accountability are paramount.
Academic initiatives must have clear goals and measurable outcomes. The Office of Shared Accountability needs adequate resources to evaluate programs and eliminate ineffective spending. Due to understaffing, important valuations that were scheduled for completion last spring still have not been published, including evaluations of tutoring, which still is partially funded by the state, central program and math course placement identifiers, Eureka Math, and two-way immersion. MCPS cannot make informed decisions without these evaluations. And when the data tells a story, we need to listen and make difficult choices in a limited budget. For example, every year, the superintendent and the board receives reports showing that in regional IB programs like Kennedy, Rockville, Seneca Valley, and Springbrook, very few students end up taking the IB exams. And of these students, the pass rates are also low. The chances of earning a full IB diploma through these programs is quite low. It is time to review whether these programs should be consolidated and refocused on students most likely to achieve a full diploma, saving on fees, transportation, and administrative costs, and instead focus the resources on strengthening grade level and honors courses with proven curricula and professional development. Likewise, MCPS is rolling out AP Pre-Calc and AP Seminar English 10 courses that lack curriculum and have been criticized as a way for the College Board to simply collect more fees without offering real benefits to students, while claiming there's no money this year for new instructional materials in Pre-Calc, English 10, or high school science. There's no data to suggest that the outcomes in these courses are better, and please read my written testimony for more information. Thank you. In short, we fully fund a fully funded budget, but ask for strategic investments. Thank you.
Ms. John, you got all of it in. Impressive. All right. Is Rockville cluster in the house? No? Okay, so Jonathan, you may begin.
Great, thank you. And good evening, President Yang, Superintendent Taylor, members of the Board of Education, MCPS staff. My name is Jonathan Thesson, and I am the parent of 3 children who have attended MCPS schools, including a 3rd grader who's currently at Bell Elementary School. I'm also one of the Montgomery County Council PTA's cluster coordinators for the Richard Montgomery cluster. In my oral testimony tonight, I would like to make 5 points. My written testimony expounds on these and other points. First, MCPS should return class sizes to the 2023 to 2024 levels, and over the longer term, reduce class sizes in a fiscally responsible manner. And on this, I agree wholeheartedly with what Evelyn just said about the need for class size and how that facilitates differentiated instruction. Really small class size is a necessary foundation for an outstanding learning experience in the classroom. As Evelyn said, it lets teachers differentiate their instruction, and it facilitates effective classroom management and the minimization of disruptions. Very regretfully, last June, MCPS increased class sizes by 1 student per class across all grade levels in response to a budget shortfall. This harms students at schools that lost, quote unquote, lost teachers. In the RM cluster, one elementary school lost a kindergarten class or kindergarten teacher, and they had to then reduce the number of kindergarten classes from 4 to 3 classes. So if you're a student who entered this year, your class size was more than 1 student in that kindergarten class. It was significantly larger because we went from 4 classes to 3 classes. Our cluster's high school, Richard Montgomery, lost 7 teachers as part of this class size increase. And as a result, they had to cut class offerings such as the Latin program and other electives. Now let me just talk about the current class size guidelines so we're all clear on what we're talking about. Current class sizes this year have maximums of 25 students for kindergarten, 26 students for 1st and 2nd grade, 27 students for 3rd grade, and 29 students for 4th and 5th grade. This is at the elementary level. But here's the kicker. Under MCPS's rules, all classes must have at least 1 student above the maximum class size, and 1 class must have at least 2 students above the maximum class size in order for the school to request additional staffing. So ask yourself, would you want your kindergarten child to attend a class with 27 students? Or would you want your 4th grader to have 31 students in his or her class? I commend board member Laura Studer for asking MCPS to calculate projected budget costs for reducing class size for kindergarten through 2nd grade. That's the type of data that we need, that you need to make these decisions. MCPS also rescind the policy that permits classes to have up to 2 students above stated maximums before the school receives an additional allocation. It's not transparent. It's not consistent with the idea of a stated maximums. Now, you all on the Board of Education should feel confident that the political will exists to fund a reduction in class size. Last June, I led a petition where over 2,600 individuals, most of whom were county residents, signed that urged the Board of Education not to increase class size. I did that over, frankly, a 3-day period. So the political will exists to get this work done. Let me turn to a related issue. the timing for staffing allocations. We understand that MCPS typically provides staffing allocations for the following school year in February or March. A reduction in staffing that's announced in that February or March time period is too early. For clusters like Richard Montgomery that have moderate to high mobility among families and a high number of emergent multilingual learners, MCPS should expect and account for fluctuations in enrollment that occur through the summer. Therefore, any reduction in staffing should be put on hold until MCPS has a strong understanding of what total enrollment will look like, which is usually midsummer, according to our principals. Under MCPS's current approach, a school may receive a reduced allocation in February or March, need to release a teacher at that time, and then in the summer see a growth in enrollment that increases the school's allocation. But at that point, the teacher they released in February or March has likely already found another job within MCPS, and that's a loss for that school. In my remaining time, I'm going to briefly touch upon several RM cluster-specific items. First, our schools are not all the same size, so having one position per school or basing staffing solely on percentages shortcomes schools with larger enrollments. So for example, Bayard Rustin has over 800 students in recent years, which is more than some middle schools. They've asked for a second assistant principal, and we fully support Superintendent Taylor's recommendation that elementary schools with more than 750 students receive a second assistant principal. Next, I want to mention Superintendent Taylor's emphasis on meeting the needs of multi-language learners. We fully support that. RM, our high school, has seen a growth of 75% in EML students over the last 3 years. And then finally, I want to say MCPS, along with the county, should continue to support Twin Brook Elementary School, which is our cluster's Title I and community school. Farms rate's now above 88%. They need the support. Appreciate your consideration for these and other asks. Thank you.
Thank you. Junha, you're next.
Good evening, Dr. Taylor and the board members. My name is Junhua Liu. I'm one of the Wooten Cluster coordinators. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding the fiscal year 2026 operating budget. I would like to address 3 critical areas that directly impact the quality of education and the well-being of our students at Wooten Cluster and other schools. Number 1, class size increases and addressing pandemic education loss. We are deeply concerned about the additional increases in class sizes planned for fiscal year 2026. Larger class size made it difficult for teachers to provide individualized attention to students, which is critical as we continue to address the significant learning losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic disrupted traditional learning and left many students behind academically and emotionally. Smaller class sizes are essential to support targeted interventions, individualized instruction, and the rebuilding of foundational skills that some students missed during those critical years. So we urge the board to prioritize funding to maintain reasonable class sizes, ensuring our educators have the capacity to meet the needs of all students, particularly those who are still catching up from the pandemic's effects. Number 2, addressing hate in schools. Hate and intolerance have no place in our schools. Unfortunately, these incidents persistent and harm the sense of community and belonging that our students deserve. To address this, I encourage the board to allocate funding for comprehensive anti-bias training for staff, students, and the initiatives that celebrate diversity and inclusion. Every student should feel respected and valued, regardless of their background or identity. Schools must be safe places of learning, free from fear and discrimination. Number 3, student safety, mental health, and well-being. The mental health and well-being of our students must remain a priority. This includes addressing the physical condition of our school buildings. In Wooten Cluster, we have many schools in very bad condition. Broken facilities and malfunctioning HVAC systems not only create uncomfortable learning environments, but also contribute to stress, frustration, and health concerns among students and staff. When students are too cold, too hot, or distracted by disrepair of their environment, the ability to focus on learning is compromised. Furthermore, such conditions can intensify feelings of neglect and anxiety. I urge the board to allocate the resources to repair and modernize facilities, ensuring that every student have access to a safe, clean, and comfortable learning environment. In closing, I urge the board to prioritize those issues in the fiscal year 2026 operating budget. Addressing class size and pandemic learning loss, combating hate, repairing infrastructure, and fostering safe and supportive environments will ensure that our schools remain places where all students can thrive. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the success of our school system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will also want to invite Nicholas Basie from Paint Branch to come. There's an additional seat right there. And next we will go to Hannah. No. Okay, so we'll go to Rachel from Springbrook Cluster.
Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Taylor. My name is Rachel Stallcup, and I'm the cluster coordinator for the Springbrook Cluster, which is representing schools in the East County. I'm an MCPS parent of a 6th grader at White Oak Middle School in the Spanish Immersion Program. I'm also an MCC-PTA delegate there. And I have a 4th grader at Maryville Elementary School in the French Immersion Program. So I'm a new cluster coordinator, so today I'm bringing you a snippet of what I've heard as I'm starting to get to know the schools in my cluster. I imagine in the future I'll be able to share more about what I'm hearing from these schools. But for today, I'll focus on 2 schools, both of which are Title I schools, Cresthaven Elementary School and White Oak Middle School. At Cresthaven Elementary School, they're facing some serious building maintenance issues, and this is despite being a relatively new building of just 13 years old. The school continues to have persistent and unresolved HVAC issues. Part of the building lacks adequate heat during the colder months and lack of air conditioning in the warmer months, and this problem has persisted without meaningful attention or a lasting solution, and it directly impacts the learning environment. On multiple occasions, instruction has been disrupted. Students have had to be relocated to other parts of the building, which weren't as conducive to learning. And these movements obviously present logistical challenges for the teachers and staff. Before and after care students have been known to wear heavy coats inside due to a malfunctioning AC unit in the multipurpose room. They understand that a repair is forthcoming, but they would like faster response for the timing of these repairs. White Oak Middle School is also facing some HVAC issues, including leaks caused by malfunctioning AC units. The school is due for an HVAC replacement, but they want to be sure that this replacement takes place in a timely manner. I also want to address ADA and accessibility issues at White Oak Middle School. Currently, the school fails to provide adequate seating for wheelchair-bound students, and these barriers to accessibility are inaccessible and are frankly directly contradicting MCPS's commitment to equity and inclusion. Now, we do want to commend the county because last year they invested in new ADA-compliant bathrooms and walkways, and that's been greatly appreciated. These upgrades have made a significant difference in the entire community. However, the cafeteria still does not adequately serve all students with dignity. The serving lines cannot accommodate wheelchairs. The furniture needs to be updated to provide inclusive seating options and to prevent tripping hazards. The dance room also remains inaccessible to students with mobility issues, which sort of has an irony because movement-based instruction would greatly benefit that student population. I also want to address classroom space. So the Spanish immersion moved to White Oak just 2 years ago. And they're very grateful for the infusion of this program into the school, but it does create the need for dedicated classroom spaces. Programs like this and also the Project Success program that they host require consistent rooms in order to build community between the teachers and students, and rotating between rooms is not necessarily feasible for these specialized programs. Additionally, I want to bring up an issue that I've heard a few times, which is that White Oak is considered under-occupied, but this is really a misleading designation. Many of the rooms, especially on the first floor of the building, are too small to serve as classrooms, yet they're factored into the school's square footage, which skews the capacity calculations. We've heard these rooms referred to as dungeon classrooms because they're small, they're windowless, and the learning spaces fail to meet basic standards. Students frequently work in the hallways due to insufficient classroom capacity. Additionally, emergency exit lights on this floor either do not exist or are not functional, and the main lights are hardwired to remain on, but this is obviously an ineffective solution in the event of a power outage. The last thing I'll say is that the previous cluster coordinator took council member Will Jawando and Kristen Mink to do a tour of that very space that I just described a couple of years ago, and yet it remains the same. So this is a persistent issue. I have some other issues that I've highlighted in my written testimony, but those are the ones I wanted to bring forth today. So I urge the board to prioritize the needs of the Springbrook cluster, including what I just described at Crest Haven and White Oak. Because these investments aren't just about fixing what's broken, but creating an environment that supports equity, safety, and student success. We greatly appreciate the work that's been done so far and hope it continues. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, next we'll go to Henriette. Henriette? Henriette. All right. Please proceed.
MCPS can no longer rely on past achievements to tout its greatness as a school system. Our students and educators need real support and resources to restore our county's true potential. Dear Board of Education members, my name is Andrea St. Gerard. I am co-Sherwood Cluster Coordinator and AVP of the Northeast Consortium, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. The focus on improving reading and math test scores is long overdue. Superintendent Taylor's decision to prioritize these critical areas recognizes the significant learning losses our students faced during COVID and the recent MCAT results. Moving forward, we need a clear and actionable plan for academic recovery. Every investment must lead to measurable outcomes, especially for our most vulnerable students who have suffered the most from these disruptions. The Sherwood Cluster applauds the attention to staffing and special education. The $46.7 million allocated for special education staffing and 47 new positions for emergent multilingual learners will significantly benefit our diverse community. The acknowledgement of poor planning around the end of ESSER funding is a step forward and a reminder of the outcomes of short-term thinking. While I appreciate the acknowledgement of past oversights, we cannot afford such missteps again. I challenge MCPS to implement long-term financial planning that safeguard essential services like mental health and support for summer programming. Our students' needs don't disappear when federal funding dries up. We must build a sustainable framework that ensures continuity of critical services regardless of external funding fluctuations. The proposed $9 million and 22 new FTEs for major maintenance signals progress I have long advocated for. This is a good first step, and I ask you this evening to follow this with a commitment to modernize how we handle work orders to make the process more efficient. Working heating and cooling systems, safe buildings, and comfortable classrooms should not be viewed as luxuries. They are basic needs to ensure our students learn well. As cluster coordinator and a persistent advocate in this space, I will keep pushing for a clear, data-driven plan to tackle our backlog and prevent persistent maintenance issues. And as you just heard from Rachel, as AVP, I've consistently advocated for HVAC year after year, whether it be for Springbrook, Sherwood, or Paint Branch. And I continue to emphasize this, and I appreciate the investment being made on the maintenance to at least resolve the problem. Finally, I must express some disappointment at the lack of urgency in addressing class sizes. Last year's increase in class sizes by 1 student per class was a step backward, and this budget does not reflect a meaningful commitment to reversing that decision. Reducing class sizes must become a clear priority with measurable goals, dedicated funding, and a timeline for action. This is not an optional improvement. It is fundamental to enhancing the quality of education in our county. This $3.61 billion budget is a significant investment in our students' futures. It demands transparency, accountability, and equity in resource allocation. The Sherwood Cluster stands ready to support implementation and ensure these investments deliver results. I thank you for your dedication to our schools and for considering my testimony. My submitted written testimony differs from my remarks this evening, and I invite you to review it in detail for a more comprehensive view of my thoughts and suggestions. Again, MCPS could no longer rely on its name and past achievements. Our students and educators deserve real support and resources to restore our county's true potential. Let's work together to make that a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas.
Thank you. Greetings, I'm Nicholas Bassey, Paint Branch Cluster Co-Coordinator and proud MCPS parent. This testimony was crafted in consultation with leaders from Burtonsville, Cloverleaf, Fairland, Galway, Greencastle, and William Tyler Page Elementary Schools, Benjamin Banneker and Briggs Cheney Middle Schools, and Paint Branch High School. Now, as you might recall from our CIP and operating budget testimony over the past several years, our cluster has two central priorities. First is ensuring the physical and emotional safety of our students and staff, and two, ensuring the resources and support needed to find and keep high-performing teachers and other staff. Regarding school safety, with hundreds of students per school, or thousands in the case of Paint Branch High School, current support for a range of safety issues remains inadequate. We remain disheartened that even after multiple elementary school shootings across the country, including in our neighbor Virginia, our elementary schools still have no dedicated security. MCPS middle and high schools do. Why not elementary schools as well? The urgency around security after whatever was the most recent in a long list of tragedy has waned, and we remain vulnerable. Now, as I've said each year for the past several years, we're not requesting a police presence in our elementary schools. We are requesting a consistent approach to securing full-time security professionals to monitor school cameras, help manage daily traffic jams, de-escalate traffic-related and other conflicts, and deter unwelcome visitors. The need for security personnel and additional crossing guards to support student safety consistently comes up across our discussions with all of our middle and elementary schools. We note that the part-time staff are great, but each elementary school needs its own dedicated personnel. And as was noted earlier, we are grateful for the increase of 35 FTEs for elementary school security. We believe it's a good start, but with 136 elementary schools, there will still be significant needs. Now, regarding our second theme, recruiting and retaining high-quality staff, despite our cluster's amazing staff, shortages continue to make it harder for us to achieve the MCPS mission and vision. We need school psychologists, instructional specialists, paraeducators, especially to support members of our community with special needs. MCPS must prioritize attracting and retaining top talent that will otherwise go to neighboring school districts. Reducing class sizes, at least to their previous levels, is a concern as well. Please partner with us to address these historical issues. Now, in addition to these core themes, each school in the cluster also has some unique priorities, and there are some similar themes which you will note. So Burtonsville Elementary School needs a security assistant or a crossing guard at the parent pickup area to assist with traffic control. Cloverleaf Elementary likewise needs security staff to manage increasing congestion and other traffic-related issues on Briggs Cheney Road. Fairland Elementary needs staff to monitor and ensure safety and security during arrival and dismissal times due to congestion on Fairdale Road. Galway Elementary requests security support for traffic during arrival and dismissal. As you can hear, that is a common theme across our cluster. Greencastle Elementary needs a facilities aides to support with the transitions between the school's many portable classrooms. We know that there is a construction project that hopefully will wrap up soon, but there are still needs for assistance in navigating the portable classrooms. They also need additional building services position to support their more than 760 students and train staff to support their more than 170 students with IEPs, as well as dedicated security personnel, particularly extending the contract of their temporary part-time security assistant at least through the end of this academic year. William Tyler Page needs 2 or 3 more rovers or dedicated security personnel, activity buses for after-school programs that are paid for centrally and not through the school's budget. Through our middle schools, Benjamin Banneker requests staff to support student emotional wellness generally, as well as additional support for students with special needs. Briggs Cheney Middle School requests staff dedicated to implementing the restorative justice model that was very well described earlier today, as well as additional security personnel. Paint Branch High School likewise requests personnel dedicated to restorative justice. Look, we recognize the financial constraints that you face in allocating our operating budget. Now, despite those constraints, we urge you to allocate an appropriate share to the Paint Branch cluster because we have critical needs as outlined in this testimony. We thank you again for your time, your attention, and your partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we please play the tapes from Churchill, Magruder, and Damascus cluster?
Susan Lifsey, Winston Churchill Cluster Coordinator. Good evening, President Yang, Superintendent Taylor, members of the Board of Education. My name is Susan Lifsey, and I am the MCCPTA Winston Churchill Cluster Coordinator. Thank you for this opportunity to testify regarding the recommended FY 2026 operating budget and the needs of the Winston Churchill Cluster. Please refer to the written copy for my full testimony. Winston Churchill Cluster's concern is common to the clusters across the county. We want a safe and optimal learning environment for our students. We appreciate Superintendent Taylor taking the time and meeting with our community members to hear our concerns. We understand that we will need to eat a lot of proverbial broccoli in order to have a healthier MCPS. We know this will take time. The question is, what can we do for our students and teachers now who have grown weary waiting for relief? Winston Churchill Cluster teachers, like most in our county, need more support to carry out their monumental task of engaging and educating our students. Every year, we come before you and request additional staffing across the board, and especially in special education and for EML students. This year is no different. Winston Churchill Cluster asks for a reduction in class sizes. At a minimum, we ask for class sizes to be reduced to the 23-24 guideline levels with an intention towards further reduction in the future, especially at the primary school level. Last year's budget increased class sizes by 1 student per class. While this may not seem significant on paper, the reality is that many of our classrooms were already overcrowded. By example, our cluster elementary schools experienced class sizes from 29 students to 40 students in a math class. How can we expect our teachers to provide differentiated instruction in these crowded classes? There isn't enough time during the day. Setting aside these varying academic needs in one class that may include IEPs, EMLs, remedial, grade level, and enriched instruction, these crowded classes are a haven for student behavioral disruptions. In a class with 30 or more students, it means that too many students are missing their lessons. We are witnessing an increase in behavioral disruptions at the primary school level, causing interference in instruction and students feeling unsafe. There should be a firm number for class sizes, and additional staffing of teachers and paraeducators should be added as soon as a class size number is surpassed. Winston Churchill Cluster asks for more staffing and better supports for special education and EML students and teachers. We want our special education and EML students to be equipped to succeed from day one. Schools should know the needs of the incoming class before the start of the school year, so appropriate support can be in place on the first day of school. We ask MCPS to examine the number and needs of incoming EML and IEP students, not just existing students, to allocate proper staffing and resources as of the first day of school. We ask for more clarity in the formula for special education and EML hires. There's no transparent means to ask for additional special education and EML staffing. Examination of total hours needed to support special education and EML students do not match the staffing provided. Special education and EML students need more paraeducators and resources, especially in the primary grades like K through 1. Special education and EML teachers need more support, such as resource teachers and designated leaders to support elementary and special programs. EMLs need additional full-time teachers, not just part-time allocations, to implement the current recommended schedules of support. We appreciate Dr. Taylor's inclusion of additional paraeducator hires, reclassification of paraprofessionals, and moving part-time paraprofessionals to full-time assignments. We ask for clarification of the proposed actual number of new hires. We ask for training to be provided in the writing and implementation of IEP reports. IEP report format should be consistent throughout the county and provide clear understanding of a student's present levels and goals so teachers and supports will know how to best serve the student. Additional support for compliance is also needed. Far too often, documents and assessments are not timely provided or conducted in preparation for IEP meetings. An examination of how to make the current system more consistent and efficient is needed. We ask that occupational support, such as speech pathologists, be aggressively recruited. More speech pathologists are needed, and they should provide in-person services for optimal results. Several of our cluster schools receive special speech pathology services virtually. While this checks the box for providing the service, we can all agree that this method will not provide optimal outcomes. One of our elementary schools has been without a speech pathologist for over a month. Please read the rest of my testimony in the written copy provided. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Taylor and members of the board. My name is Kristen Erdheim, and I serve as Magruder Cluster Coordinator along with Leanne Parnell. I'm a parent to 3 current MCPS students, a 2022 grad, and I'm also a substitute teacher in the county. The Magruder cluster is home to an increased number of students who are FARMS eligible, an increased number of students who are English language learners, and many unique special education programs, including SESES and one of only 2 enhanced SESES programs in the county, 2 learning centers, an autism program, an extensions program, PEP programs, and one of 2 physical disabilities programs in the county. As the number of students and families requiring support grows, so do our budgetary and staffing needs. Many of the learning centers and SESES classrooms have multiple students in each class with more challenging needs than these programs can meet. Instead of cutting specialized programs, MCPS should be adding more of them instead of having fewer openings for the increasing number of students with significant needs. Admins, teachers, and staff are doing the best they can with current staffing, but the needs of many of these children are substantial, and it is difficult to meet all students' needs with current staffing levels. We request that MCPS consider adding more specific needs-based program classrooms throughout the county and increase staffing in current classes. Our students continue to show significant mental health concerns, including our youngest learners, as well as academic deficits that continue to linger. The operating budget must prioritize the social, emotional, and academic needs of our community, recognizing that the degree of impact continues to rise. We request that MCPS change their policy regarding not giving benefits to one-on-one aides. Many of the one-on-one staff members are TPT workers and therefore not eligible for benefits, paid time off, etc. So it shouldn't be a surprise that most of the unfilled positions at many of our schools are in this category. A one-on-one aide for a student with significant challenges is not an easy job, so why would we expect someone to fill these difficult positions with no paid time off, no sick leave, and no health benefits? In addition, all of our cluster schools with school-based learning centers or other specialized programs request additional staff to handle the growing number of students and the increased needs of the students in these programs. We also request a permanent substitute position for all of our elementary schools and 2 permanent subs for the middle schools in our cluster. Having our paras consistently cover for teachers when substitutes aren't available isn't fair to them or to all the students who do not receive their necessary interventions when those staff members are pulled from their daily duties and being used as substitutes. Flower Hill is very appreciative for their extra half counselor position since it has already made a positive difference in absenteeism rates, but we request that MCPS adhere to a 250-to-1 student to counselor ratio at a minimum for all schools in our cluster, especially the ones with the most impacted students. 1 counselor for 500 students is simply not enough to address the needs of our students, staff, families, and community. We also want to ensure that every elementary school has an assistant principal and every middle school maintains its current administrator allocations. Smaller schools do not mean fewer needs. Staffing allocation should reflect the needs of our population and not just based on numbers and ratios. Many of our schools have highly impacted students, and we should be making sure that we have enough administrators, qualified staff, and counselors to address their needs. The mental health needs of our students and staff continue to increase, and we recommend continuing to implement systematic screenings of all students to provide appropriate intervention and make necessary connections to mental health providers. We also request a better way to ensure our current high school counselors are truly engaged with their students. As a cluster coordinator, I have heard my share of parental concerns as it relates to the high school counselors. Some staff go above and beyond to ensure the needs of their students, and others fail to reply to emails, give students inaccurate information, and do not seem to have any true engagement. Some of these concerns are warranted considering the amount of students each counselor is responsible for, but much of the larger issues stem from a lack of accountability from the schools and the county. This needs to change. Many of our school communities have an increasing number of families who require additional support, meals, transportation, access to information, and more. We must ensure that we continue to have structures in place for outreach to our underrepresented communities. Many of our students continue to have deficits in foundational reading and writing skills, though are not targeted for reading intervention or necessarily require a daily intervention. Our upper elementary and secondary students need these skills infused into the curriculum and a plan from MCPS to include it without requiring a student to be identified as in need of literacy intervention. Students continue to have gaps in math skills at all levels. The elementary curriculum moves so quickly from one topic to the next, and teachers are so concerned with making sure they cover everything that many students can't keep up and end up missing integral parts of the foundational math skills they require. We request that students are provided with appropriate intervention to identify gaps in math skills and that emphasis be put on filling them. Equity add-on, as proposed by Dr. Taylor, would continue to add necessary human resources to address student achievement among our emerging multilingual learners and our students with IEPs, and our cluster is a supporter of this proposal. Thank you for your time. We hope you are able to address some of the significant needs within the Magruder cluster, and we look forward to working with you to provide a better future for our staff and students.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Taylor, and fellow attendees. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Danny Ibarra, and I, along with my co-cluster coordinator, Amy Ibakachi, am grateful for the chance to share feedback for the Damascus cluster. I have 3 children in MCPS, one of whom receives special education services. We are advocating for increased critical resources, including paraeducator support, reducing class sizes, and professional development for staff. These investments will enhance the quality of education and support for all students. First, we must prioritize returning to the smaller class sizes of the 23-24 school year. Overcrowded classrooms, like the current situation with 26 kindergartners in one room at Damascus Elementary, create environments where foundational learning is compromised. Kindergarten is a critical stage for developing essential academic, social, and emotional skills. When teachers are stretched too thin, they cannot provide the individualized attention young learners need, which hinders progress and affects their confidence. The issue is compounded by sudden changes in staffing. For example, one local school lost a total of 4 teachers between allocations and increasing class sizes demands. Once the next school year started and was well underway, an additional 3rd grade teacher was hired to manage the influx of students in our transient area. While necessary, this caused significant disruptions, with students having to adjust to a new teacher midway through the school year. These shifts harm academic continuity and emotional stability. Consistent staffing and manageable class sizes are essential to fostering strong learning environments. Supporting our educators is equally critical. Teachers and staff are the foundation of our schools. When they feel safe, supported, and heard, they create environments where students can learn inclusively and responsibly. Dr. Taylor's initiatives, such as competitive compensation, mental health resources, and meaningful professional development, are vital for retaining talented educators and ensuring their success. Investing in our teachers means investing in our students. The Damascus cluster also houses a variety of special education programs that serve not only local families, but also those from Clarksburg and Germantown. Many families travel 15 to 20 minutes to access these programs, underscoring their importance. However, these programs need appropriate funding and paraeducator support to meet the diverse needs of students. Paraeducators are essential in managing classrooms, providing one-on-one support and addressing behavioral needs. Increasing their numbers would significantly improve outcomes for students and reduce the strain on teachers. Strong, inclusive special education programs foster compassion, collaboration, and understanding among all students and staff, enriching the educational experiences for everyone. These specialized programs don't just serve a small population, they strengthen the educational experience for all involved. A separate challenge unique to Clear Spring Elementary is the presence of the Center for Enriched Studies, which draws students from outside the immediate community. These students come from nearby Clarksburg and surrounding areas, bringing with them a highly differentiated set of demographics and income levels. While the program enriches the educational opportunities offered at Clear Spring, it also creates a ripple effect that significantly impacts the school's status and funding. The inclusion of this diverse group of students, while valuable in many ways, introduces complexities that extend beyond academics. With shifts in socioeconomic makeup, the school faces increased challenges in meeting the needs of its expanded population. At the same time, funding structures often fail to account for these unique dynamics, leaving Clear Spring in a precarious position where resources may be stretched thin or inequitably allocated. This situation underscores the importance of a fair and adaptive approach to funding across the whole district. Schools like Clear Spring, which bear the weight of balancing community expectations with the demands of specialized programs, should not be penalized for their role in serving a broader population. Instead, they should be supported with adequate funding and resources to ensure that all students, whether from the immediate neighborhood or neighboring communities, receive a high-quality education. The needs of the Damascus cluster are interconnected and essential to the success of our students and educators. We understand that budget constraints and competing priorities exist. However, by by prioritizing smaller class sizes, increasing the number of paraeducators, providing professional training for staff, and enhancing special education resources, we can ensure that MCPS remains a school district where every child is empowered to reach their full potential. Thank you for your continued dedication to the students and families of the Damascus cluster.
Thank you for the cluster representative for their testimony. And Ms. Wolf want to let all of you know that she has laryngitis, but she's listening attentively online. I'm going to go towards my colleagues, go to see if my colleagues have comments and questions. Let's keep it one comment and one question. And I will start with Ms. Zimmerman.
Thank you again, everyone, for providing your testimony. It was really thorough. I appreciate that a lot. Ms. Yang, I have two questions. Now I have to decide.
I'll come back around.
Okay, great. So I'm curious about cost of the permanent sub program, and if I'm not mistaken, we had a pilot program at one point. So what kind of results we can see with that? Thank you.
Is it just data request you have for your second question? You want to just request it together? Yes, go ahead.
Okay. It's not quite a data request, but I'd like to see a clearer picture and kind of our processes on how we allocate for educators at individual schools, especially with fluctuation over the summer, and I want to see that process broken down and how we can minimize that back and forth, the loss of and the movement of our educators.
I'm going to, no. Ms. Rivera-Owens.
I just wanted to, one other testimony from Mr. Jonathan Tessin about the whole allocation and how that is. I know, and maybe Dr. Tato can, because this was one of the questions I had when I joined, because I always thought, why do we do it that way? But there is a whole good answer to that, and it has to do with a lot of requirements that the county and the state has for us to have those numbers, because they're also going through the budget. And it's also, for me at least, with the EML students, a lot of our EML students come in our process almost at the end of the year. We have usually enough fluctuation, but then we don't have any grace period, no pun intended, to be able to. So I'm going to have Dr. Taylor just kind of.
Certainly, and this is actually an area where we could stand to improve greatly. Presently, right now, we do a forecast of our enrollment at a singular point in time, and that singular point in time is in September, versus doing a forecast of what could potentially be a year's worth of student enrollments. And student enrollment does change, as Ms. Rivera-Oven pointed out. So this is actually an opportunity for us to review as we look at how we want to staff in the future. This budget does not include class size enhancement. It doesn't. That is probably one of the single most expensive things that we would do in a budget process. And we already are extending some pretty significant expenditures just to correct some things that we need to correct in the budget and to bring us up to where we even should be in the first place. But as we look ahead, we absolutely need to address class size. We absolutely need to address what the standardization looks like in each classroom. What is our commitment as a county to an appropriate class size at each grade level? What kind of supports do we need to allocate to each of those grade levels? But more importantly than that, how do we predicate, or what data points do we use to predicate that decision for staffing placement? Are we using a number that's predicated on a September 30 enrollment date, January 1st enrollment date, or a March 31st enrollment date as a touch point for how we even come up with that staffing number in the first place? These are great questions. We're definitely going to need MCC PTA and a lot of our other community groups to weigh in on how best to staff our schools moving forward. Have a multi-year game plan, because it's going to be expensive, and what areas we can tackle first.
Yeah, I'd say look at trends and talk to principals on those two issues. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a consideration. But the last thing I want to say is, and maybe this is something about the crossing guard. I'm huge on being preventive versus lamenting situations. As somebody who advocated for a crossing guard for Southwick Elementary and was not given one until something did happen, I just wanted to see if we can actually have Mr. Dixon look into that now versus then later, especially if it's for our younger elementary school children. And I just want to say thank you to all for your testimony. I heard you, we heard you loud and clear about, especially about our students with, who are medical fragile, with disabilities, and special education, EML and farm learners, right? These are areas that, have really, we haven't had a lot of focus the way it should have been, and they have grown to with a lot of needs, and we really, really, really need to tackle those needs today. We cannot kick the can down the road anymore, in a sense. And again, this is just to make us at a level where we can be actually functional, and bring it to, with the para-educators, which I applaud the system for doing, because I think that was long due, because I think we're going to see the impact, and also being able to keep the incredible good people that we have in our system, because, we have a lot of folks who working part-time just doesn't cut it in Montgomery County. So if they can go to another county to work full-time and get benefits, guess what? They're going to do that. So we are, facing reality in a lot of these things. And I just want to, thank the staff and my colleagues for tackling the issues head on, and being very, very transparent with the community and saying this is where we are, but this is what we need to do. So thank you all for coming and for representing.
Ms. Montoya?
Thank you so much. So thank you again for all of you for coming. Like me, I know you have your children at home and you're trying to get it all done. So I appreciate you taking the time and for the work that you do on behalf of your cluster and your schools. I kind of just want to address the community generally, just so that everyone at home, online, everyone who's here, who can make it, who can submit testimony. I do hear you, and I share many of these experiences with you. I have children with large class sizes, right? I know what it's like to have your elementary school child in a class with 29 kids. And then they might get 2 or 3 or 4 more throughout the year, right? And that really puts it over, and that doesn't necessarily change anything in terms of adding teachers or things like that. So I do, and I also just want us all to try to remember every ask comes with a price tag. So for example, when we say we want to have a security assistant at every single elementary school, if I'm doing my math right, Dr. Taylor, that would be about $8,400,000, which is an additional $6.2 million ask. Right, just for one. When we're talking about teachers, we got to add a whole lot of zeros on. I can't even guess what that number would be like, right? Especially across the board, because we don't want to be picking and choosing where we do that, right? All of our schools have need in some way or another. So one thing I would appreciate if someone is willing is, where should we take from? Because if we fill an ask here, we likely have to pull from somewhere else. And that is the hard job that we have. And I mean this in earnest. If there is a space where you think that we should be shifting, I would love to hear that. So thank you again for all of you being here. I really do appreciate your thought and your concern.
Ms. Stewart?
Sure. I do hear a theme about class size. And we heard from Dr. Taylor that we have to think strategically about this moving forward. And if Pat O'Neill was here, I think she'd remember that there was a resolution passed January 8th, 2019, to create a class size task force. And the resolution was resolved that the superintendent of schools provide a report to the Board of Education concerning an examination no later than the Board of Education business meeting on June 11th, 2019. Well, I don't think that happened. And then guess what happened? COVID. So it sounds like Dr. Taylor is on the path to looking at class sizes more completely, just the way we allocate teachers, the way our caps aren't really caps, et cetera. I think he invited MCPS-MD and other parents to weigh in on that. And so maybe we could revive this resolution on a class size task force. as part of this budget process.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Thank you. And I want to acknowledge hearing your concerns, many of your concerns, one of being class-sized. And I always go to school. I have been in language classrooms with 34 students. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I really fully acknowledge the class size issue. And I also have some data requests for the staff. One is I would like to have a list of schools that does not have a second administrator. And then we haven't gone to the regional IB program evaluation. So as the board, we try to put, with the school system, we put program on a rotating schedule for evaluation. We haven't done that one yet. But I would like to have some preliminary data on enrollment, test taken, and pass rate, if I can have that. And another one is we have made significant investment in our curriculums. I would like to have an understanding at the elementary school levels what intervention materials we purchase and their price tag. I will appreciate this information, and I would like to go on to our next set of testimony, go to individuals. Thank you so much for your testimony tonight. I will call Jennifer Jones, Daniela Helton, Denise Ackermanshon, Joe Swartz, Laurel Kennedy to the front. Thank you. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Taylor and Board of Education members. I'm excited to speak to you tonight. You are the dream team I've been waiting for. I'm Dr. Jennifer Jones, 44-year resident, MCPS graduate, and 33-year employee with 26 years as an elementary school counselor. It's my 14th year asking for an equitable ratio of elementary school counselors. This may be my last budget testimony as an MCPS employee because I plan to retire this summer. I've attached all of my previous testimonies so you have an accurate history with research to support it, including lots of extras. Half of our 137 elementary schools still only have one full-time counselor. At Lake Seneca, we have an additional half-time counselor. That means half the time I'm still the only one. This is true for most of my elementary counselor colleagues. Dr. Taylor, your budget presentation was the best I have seen. There are many problems you want to address. When you visited Lake Seneca in September, you shared with me that you support the ASCA recommended ratio of 1 to 250 for all K-12 schools. In Appendix C, there's no improvement in the elementary counselor staffing ratio formula to match the 1 to 250 ratio that all middle and high schools have for many years. It says 1 full-time counselor for each elementary school with an additional half-time allocated to non-focus schools over 700, focus schools over 600, and Title I schools between 510 and 650. That's crazy. An additional full-time counselor to Title I schools over 650. Dr. Taylor, you have a 10-year plan to fix many of our problems. You plan to use discretionary funds to add 52 security assistants. Thank you. Please consider early prevention and more than behavior intervention later. Tonight, I'm asking you to commit to a 10-year plan that adds 5 full-time elementary counselor positions every year to allow 10 more elementary schools, another half-time counselor starting with the largest schools. By 2035, every elementary school could have at least 1.5 to 2 counselors. I'm also asking you to promise not to remove any elementary counselor positions when enrollment may dip at any particular school. Tonight, I don't have broccoli, but items our youngest learners have trouble opening at lunch because I'm there and I see them. If every kid is a popcorn kernel and emotions are universal, then elementary counselors are keyed in supporting all students so they can pop. Our youngest learners get frustrated, anxious, and upset simply trying to open a bottle of water, a ketchup packet, or a bag of carrots. As we lower the elementary counselor ratio, we won't need to add more security staff later. We must end the convoluted staffing formula. We need an equitable ratio. Elementary counselors. I'm happy to help the Board of Ed members write on a budget amendment like I did successfully with Jeanette Dixon and add some 5 elementary counselor positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Daniela. Go ahead.
Good evening, Dr. Taylor and members of the board. My name is Daniela Helton, and I'm an elementary school counselor at Little Bennett. This is my 21st year as a counselor, and I've lost track of how many times I've come before the board to share my thoughts about our youngest learners and their mental health needs. I'm excited about the inflection point Thomas described in his recent presentation. Our students need change, and they deserve better. But I believe at the core of all of these changes is mental health. I hope we can agree that if a child, or any human being for that matter, is having a strong, overwhelming feeling, they will not be available for learning and they will be unable to perform their best. This is where school counselors step in to partner with teachers and support students. The mental health and well-being of our children begins with our youngest learners, and the staff leading this charge are elementary school counselors. School counselors serve the complex needs of our students by working with them individually, in a group or class setting, making referrals for additional help, working with parents and teachers of the student, ensuring students come to school with their basic needs met, supporting attendance and behavior. The list goes on. School counselors do their best to meet the needs of students no matter how rich or poor the kids are. That's the thing about mental health. It affects everyone and doesn't take economic status into account. The job of an elementary school counselor is complex, which is perhaps why it is so often misunderstood and overlooked. A couple years ago, I noticed that the school counselor job description on our MCPS webpage had not been updated since 1996. Therefore, I decided to take a lead on this and collaborated with other counselors to update the definition, which was presented for review to central office, but is still not updated. Elementary counselors continue to get overlooked when considering counselor-to-student ratios. We are nowhere near the recommended 1 to 250 ratio that our middle and high school counselors have. Some of our counselors have close to 700 students they serve on their own. When I think about this number, it makes me recall the example that Thomas recently shared of the mother who wanted to get more help for her child's needs with a 504 plan. When schools have large ratios of students to counselors, examples like this happen and needs are overlooked. Most recently, MCPS will not recognize the only 15 school counselors who have their school counselor NBCT national certification. MCPS has been highlighting the 629 educators who have NBCT, but 15 of those people are counselors who are not getting the full compensation for this esteemed certification. Other districts like Frederick and Washington County have stepped up to compensate their counselors for NBCT, but we continue to be overlooked.
Thank you so much. We have your full testimony.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. May I go, Denise? Is Denise here? Okay, I'm going to go to Joe. Go ahead.
Good evening, honorable board members, Dr. Taylor, Chairperson Yang. My name is Joel Schwarz. I'm a parent of 4 children, 3 in MCPS, 1 who goes to private school. Currently a privacy and cybersecurity attorney, adjunct law professor teaching privacy and cybersecurity law, and I'm co-founder of the Student Data Privacy Project, a not-for-profit we formed during COVID for parents around the country to deal with student data privacy issues. I give all that as background because I want to talk about student data privacy. While FERPA and PPRA were designed to protect student data, educational technology providers, EdTech for short, regularly use that same data to market and advertise to our children, to develop new products and services, and sell the data to third-party data brokers. Let's be honest. Today's economy, data is money. And if you have access to data, you mine it for insights, you sell it for profit, and you combine it with other data to make the data richer and more valuable. But as we all know, student data is not this kind of data. It's different. It's detailed data about children. It's composed primarily of minors. It's handed over to tech companies without parental consent, often without parental knowledge, and it's often because children are required to use these products for school. So we need to police this EdTech data ecosystem. Tongue twister. That requires funding, resourcing, and staffing. To date, we've done nothing. We've not provided any funding for that. Right now, once the contract is signed, EdTech goes to vacuuming up the data, mining and using it, terabytes of it with impunity. Consider this. I recently went to Google to find out what they have on my kids, 2 of my kids at least. I found that one of my children, they had 2 gigabytes, over 2 gigabytes of data, over 2,000 files. She withdrew from MCPS well over a year ago. It goes back to 4th grade. She's now in high school. What possible educational purpose could it be for them storing data from my 4th grade daughter, who's now in high school, who doesn't even go to MCPS for more than a year? Interesting, one of the files that I looked at, for example, has Google set retention period, retention forever. So, relatedly, MCPS implemented data deletion week in 2019, but we never allocated money or resources. It happened once and hasn't since then. Even then, we never got confirmation from EdTech providers they'd actually deleted the data. I pushed our CTO at the time, and we now know that Google certainly failed to comply because they still have data on my daughter from well before 2019. Put differently, lack of oversight, follow-up, and enforcement renders even well-intentioned programs like Data Deletion Week ineffective. At SDPP, same experience. One of our Minnesota parents found that their EdTech company had had thousands of sensitive pictures and documents on her child, baby pictures, yoga poses, etc. What value is that? Well, for EdTech, the value lies in data enrichment, sharing, and data sales. Finally, you previously heard me talk about the Technology Stakeholder Advisory Group we'd like to form, the TSAC for short. But again, if we want to do this, we need to have funding. Funding for recruitment, printing, publishing, purchasing a website, design to enable community engagement, etc. So please allocate funding for EdTech oversight initiatives and for standing up the TSAG. And finally, this week could protect our children's privacy today and in the future as well. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this evening.
Thank you. And next, we'll go to Laura.
Hi. Is it on?
Yes.
Thank you for listening. I'm a mom. Last year, Viersmill Elementary School lost their Title I status. And as parents, we really didn't do anything. And well, it's been a rough couple of quarters, starting with a crisis in kindergarten that is straining staff across the school as critical staffing needs are met by pulling support from other areas. Now, we as a parent community are doing things. Our 4th and 5th grade classes last year took action and led a walkout, and they inspired me to be here tonight. I want for our new students, our kindergartners, our PEP kids, what our older students, like my Girl Scout juniors and my son in 5th grade, had excellent teaching, supported by small kindergarten classes, full-staffed English language development programs, homeschool model support. We need Dr. Taylor's equity add-on formula. The Viersmill Elementary School educators have sent you a letter detailing some of the difficulties we faced with not receiving the funds and staffing to meet the focus school guidelines or the critical staffing support from the Office of Special Education. Our NAACP rep and PTA board have also echoed these requests, highlighted critical issues with reading and math proficiency. Our principal has sent multiple critical staffing requests. Thank you so much to MCPS staff and to Julie Yang for coming out to see for yourself. Please hear us out. Follow Dr. Taylor's budget to fund homeschool model and English language development programs so our teachers and students can receive the support they need in all grade levels. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 audio testimony and 2 video testimony. Please play them.
Good evening to members of the board and members of the public. My name is Dr. Helen Baer. My son is a 2nd grader at East Silver Spring Elementary. I'm also the director of the DC Reading Clinic, a structured literacy training program for DC teachers. In my 17-year career in education, I've been a teacher, instructional coach, administrator, literacy trainer, and consultant. I've worked in school systems in Wisconsin, California, DC, and Maryland, and my doctorate is in education leadership. I want to start by saying that I am just absolutely delighted with the adoption of CKLA. Given the evidence base on the effectiveness of the program and my own experience teaching and coaching it, there may be nothing better for shifting literacy outcomes for all students in the county. In addition to my professional knowledge and experience of the curriculum, as a parent, I'm so pleased with what I'm seeing. The work my son is bringing home is rigorous and engaging. His teacher has materials that are easy for him to share. When we missed a day of school, she shared content that I was easily able to review with him so he didn't fall behind. Perhaps even more importantly, my son loves it. He's eager to share what he's learning about Greek mythology, ancient Asian religions, and now life cycles. This is a huge change from his kindergarten and first grade years in which he reported little, if anything, about what he was learning. This content-focused curriculum is so important for all kids, and I'm appreciative to the county for adopting it. As you consider the budget that Dr. Taylor has proposed for the coming fiscal year, I invite you to weigh how the budget can continue to prioritize the core of schooling, teaching and learning. This curricular shift is great for elementary ELA, but it should be just the start. I would like to know that as my son and my daughter, who is a rising kindergartner, matriculate through MCPS, that they will continue to get great evidence-based and externally vetted curriculum that intentionally builds over time. This kind of curriculum sets the base for all MCPS educators to have the materials we know support excellent teaching and learning. I'd like to see the budget include funding for 6 through 12 ELA curriculum that mirrors the quality and rigor of CKLA and materials of a similar quality for science and social studies. Teachers are highly trained professionals, but they shouldn't have to be curriculum writers as well. For example, when we build houses, we use architects to create the plans and rely on skilled builders to do the actual construction, recognizing that these are two different skill sets. Let's do the same for our MCPS classrooms. Finally, I'd like to see this budget include support for teachers' implementation of the curriculum. The materials set the floor for what instruction should include, but teachers need support in meeting the needs of all students and successfully implementing something new. At my son's school, I see so much success with CKLA, but I also see areas for growth and differentiation and instructional practice that will engage all students, especially those who are multilingual learners. Thank you for the opportunity to share my input on the proposed budget today.
Hello, my name is Sterling High, and I'm advocating for the inclusion of a non-discretionary comprehensive virtual school in the MCPS budget, a school that ensures every child in our community has access to the education they need and deserve. We all share the vision of an MCPS that serves every student, no matter their circumstances. The question before us is not whether we are committed to this vision, but how we make it a reality. The answer is clear. A high-quality virtual school is not discretionary, it is essential. Maryland law provides us with a clear mandate that requires boards of education to maintain a system of public schools that is designed to provide quality education and equal educational opportunity for all children. But the law does not stipulate that a public education must come from a brick-and-mortar school, and Maryland Code 71401 explicitly recognizes virtual schools as public schools. For students facing barriers in in-person attendance due to chronic illness, mental health challenges, or other circumstances, a virtual school isn't just an option, it's the only way that they can access the education they are legally entitled to receive. Partial measures like the blended learning program or home and hospital services are inherently insufficient. These programs are fragmented and fail to integrate students into a real school environment, leaving them without access to the cohesive educational experience that every child deserves. Without a comprehensive virtual school, these students are left behind, creating a gap that is both inequitable and avoidable. MCPS policies, particularly Policy ACA, underscore our shared commitment to equity, inclusion, and access. A virtual school isn't just a legal obligation, it's a reflection of these values. For families with children who cannot attend in person, a virtual school offers not only access to education, but also stability, a safe, consistent, and lasting environment where students can thrive. But stability requires structure. A comprehensive virtual school with secured funding and a strong curriculum will demonstrate to families that it is a reliable, enduring solution, not a temporary program subject to budgetary whims. That confidence is crucial for families making critical decisions about their children's education. Maryland law compels us to provide equal educational opportunities for all students. MCPS policies demand that we prioritize equity and inclusion. A comprehensive virtual school is the only way to fully meet these obligations, not just because we have to, but because it's the right thing to do. The BLP is not enough. It cannot satisfy legal mandates, uphold our policy commitments, or restore the trust of families who have left MCPS. A comprehensive virtual school can and will. MCPS must show these families that it is committed to providing a lasting solution for these students, one that ensures access, equity, and stability. Thank you for your time and your unwavering dedication to these students.
My name is Sophia Eckelmeyer, and our son is a 10th grader in the blended learning program. He attended the Montgomery Virtual Academy from its beginning and the BLP this year due to his status as a transplant waitlist patient. My testimony is on the role of virtual education in the FY26 budget. I'd like to begin with the wonderful news that our son received his transplant recently. Words cannot express our gratitude for having a virtual education option that allowed our son to avoid infections that could have made him ineligible for transplant or caused serious complications. However, his surgery and recovery required an extended absence. If the MVA had remained open, our son would have received full-day real-time instruction of the MCPS curriculum until his transplant, and his MVA teachers and administrators would have been much more involved and better able to help him catch up afterwards. When it was safe for him to return to in-person school, the transition from the MVA would have been fairly seamless, and he would have been at the same standard academically with his peers. Unfortunately, this year with the closure of the MVA, he didn't begin classes until 6 weeks after his in-person peers, has had only a fraction of the hours of live instruction, and is far less prepared to return to classes. His education this year has been so incomplete that returning to in-person school will be extremely challenging. The BLP's interrupted live instruction schedule and lack of community isolates its students, has caused significant learning loss, and makes a transition to or from in-person education much more difficult. For those students who will need virtual education throughout their time in school, a fragmented and socially isolating program like BLP will be disastrous. I understand MCPS leadership and some board members truly feel a virtual school is an expense the district cannot afford at this time. But the best way to remedy the learning loss of the hundreds of students for whom in-person education is not the best learning environment is to restore a full-day synchronous virtual school in the FY26 budget. The longer MCPS goes without a virtual school, the more vulnerable students will fall behind or leave the district altogether, as almost 300 students left after the MBA closed, representing a loss of almost $6 million in per-pupil funding. Demand for virtual education remains high. Last year, the MBA received more applications than it was permitted to enroll, and this year, OPTG received a record number of applications. Providing those students who learn best in a virtual environment with full-day synchronous instruction and a community of peers will optimize their learning. Improving the scores of these vulnerable students will raise the district averages as well. A fully equitable virtual school like the MBA is an essential tool with a proven track record of excellence for addressing the falling academic performance that MCPS has experienced. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Jill, a parent of a 5th grader at Piney Branch Elementary. I'd like to advocate for funding being dedicated to the adoption of high quality and externally vetted instructional materials for all grades. We can see the effects of high quality materials for K-8 math already. It's meant that learning is built coherently across grades, and students and families have access to thoughtfully developed supports that enable learning to extend outside of class time. But given how little instructional time there is for science and social studies, and how critical reading and writing is to students' learning, it's all the more important that the materials that are used are aligned to standards and are effective in supporting learning, and that teachers have a level of professional learning and ongoing coaching that are necessary to ensure that teachers are developing the tools they need to support all students.
Hi, I'm Ivy, and I think that the math materials I use have strategies that are really helpful. They make sense and help us do things like drawing models to help us figure out our answer. My teacher really understands how each of the parts of the curriculum works, but some of the other teachers who don't have the same experience can teach it well, but since they don't understand the materials fully, they can't help kids use all the parts of the lesson that may help them learn even more. In math, we learn bit by bit how to deeply understand the content. But in social studies and science, the teachers skip around and don't stay on one topic for long enough, or they don't really add little by little to help us learn deeply over time. So, getting a curriculum that does those things like we have in math would really be helpful. In social studies and science, we have blocks every day, but a lot of days we don't actually do social studies and science during those times. So we don't get to learn a lot in those subjects. So having a curriculum that everyone follows would make sure we all get the time we need to learn those subjects.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to call Hannah Donna from Poolsville cluster to come forward. You have 5 minutes, Hannah. You can push the button and begin.
Hey, good evening. So I'm here to testify on behalf of Poolesville Cluster and also as the MCCPTA Health and Wellness Committee Chair. So overall, our cluster, I'm going to start with that first, is advocating for class size reduction. I know you've heard this theme, and reinstating the class size work group that Laura had mentioned. Our cluster's large class sizes and staff shortages are adversely impacting the learning and well-being of our children. We urge the board to prioritize staffing in smaller class sizes and finding a way to fund that. What we also ask is detailed below here. So for Poolesville Elementary School is advocating for smaller class sizes with the addition of funding for more teachers, special education positions, supporting service staff, and maintenance of the staff development positions. For Monocacy Elementary School, the Monocacy community is advocating for continued support and funding for a full-time staff developer, as well as the teacher leader, since we don't have an ASA or AP. In addition, we would like to continue advocating for an ASA. This position is very important to meet the academic needs of the students. For John Poole Middle School, our community requests that the board fund a full-time staff development teacher. JPMS's position was reduced, and it has greatly impacted us at the secondary level. Protecting our staffing is also critical, especially with many of our class sizes already too large. My son's in class sizes that are over 30. For Poolesville High School has been under construction and has subsequently grown in square footage, yet neither its building service staff nor its security staff have increased commensurately. Poolesville High School is in need of these additional staffing resources to effectively assist with upkeep and safety of the school during construction and after. I'd also like to note that this is the third year I've included this request in my operating budget testimony. With that noted, our cluster thanks you again for prioritizing construction of the new high school. We're really excited. However, you might remember my testimony over the years in which I've testified about construction-related environmental hazards, hazards from chemical vapors, noise pollution from construction equipment, potential water contaminants from digging and excavating, and more. Some of the most egregious examples of issues Poolesville High School students and staff have faced over the course of construction include, but are not limited to, exposure for months to hazardous fumes during roofing installation from bitumen, which is designated as a carcinogen by the International Agency for Research in Cancer. Flooding of outdoor corridors over and over again, ceiling tiles falling in classrooms and hallways, welding fumes contaminating occupied parts of the school, and most recently, a classroom, this was 2 months ago, had to be evacuated due to fumes from melting polyvinyl chloride, which is also a carcinogen. The impacts of these incidents on learning and our children's health could have been minimized and even prevented with adequate health-based construction protocols and policies. OSHA requirements are not intended to protect the safety of children on construction sites, and MCPS lacks necessary health and safety protocols. While we understand that there's a lack of resources for holding schools for high schools undergoing modernization, which would be the optimal solution, we can't ignore the inherent unpredictability and potential dangers of that decision. We have seen firsthand how mistakes can be made that negatively impact the learning environment. If MCPS is to continue building schools while students remain on campus, it must be committed to creating robust standards that go far beyond OSHA requirements and county codes. It must be completely transparent with indoor air quality and water quality information at every level. It must properly staff its facility divisions, and it must hold the construction contractors and subcontractors accountable to ensure that workers are adhering to the highest standards for safety of the students and staff. In response to these issues and to provide a safer environment more conducive to learning, MCPS and MCCPTA formed a safer construction work group, thanks to Brenda, who supported that in August of 2023. We have also established school construction improvement teams known as SCITs at Poolesville High School and elsewhere to provide a conduit for communications and faster response to construction-related issues. The work group and SCITs are collaborating to develop more effective communications, meaningful community engagement, and stronger science-based policies and best practices at the school and district level to better protect students and staff on school construction sites. However, due to limited staff time, this process has been slow-moving and not timely enough. We want to advocate for more facility staff. I have more in my written testimony, and also for the Health and Wellness Committee is all written there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to my board members for comments and questions. We'll go with one comment and one question for the first round. I'm going to start with Ms. Matoya.
Thank you. I again want to thank everyone for coming. I know what it takes to be here, especially when you come all the way from Poolsville. So thank you so much. I'm glad you were able to give your testimony. And if you're ever not able to make it because things happen, you can always send us your testimony so that we still have it. So just quickly, I wanted to make a request tied to what our school counselors came to testify about. And thank you for sharing that. Again, the elementary school levels often get overlooked, so I really appreciate when you folks come out to let us know what's going on the ground. I would like to, these are two requests for information, but tied to the same concept. I would like to know where, if anywhere, we are at in the process of updating the school counselor job description. And I know there's a lot going on, so it's okay if we're not anywhere, but I want to just kind of figure out what's going on there. And then tied to that, I would like to know, if we know, how many MCPS school counselors do we currently have that are NBCT certified? Did I get that acronym correct?
Yes.
And connected to that, I also know that's the same challenge for our media specialists. Shout out to Mr. Daddario at Rolling Terrace. So I'd also like to know how many of our media specialists are NBCT certified as well. Thank you.
Ms. Stewart?
She took one of my questions, so I think I only have one.
We are all good.
So I wanted to follow up on the Safer Construction Work Group. I actually was part of that when it was very first formed, not over the last year, but it has a usefulness in avoiding problems in the future. We will have ongoing construction with kids on site, I'm sure. So if we could just see where we are on that, and if we could have some kind of date to report out on their work. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Savannah.
Yes, thank you. Thank everyone for their testimony here today, with a special thank you to Ms. Helton. You were actually my elementary school counselor and my sister's elementary school counselor. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and thank you for your testimony.
Okay. And I also want to thank our counselors. You have worked a full day, and then you come here to testify. I know you care deeply about the quality of education in our elementary schools. And this is my third year on the board. I'm going to request the same thing, that elementary school counselors has bear the burden of a very large student caseload. So I hear you. Thank you for coming in. Oh, there's other lights now. Ms. Zimmerman.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you to my fellow educators for being here to testify, and also I haven't shouted out my fellow educators that are here joining us, listening, following along. So really glad that you're all here.
Ms. Silvestri.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Dr. Taylor if you could follow up with Mr. Schwartz about some of the data concerns that he brought up, and Ms. Kennedy. I'll be at Twin Brook on Tuesday, so looking forward to.
No,
Twin Brook was your school?
They're Beers Mill.
Beers Mill.
Beers Mill. Ah, right, cluster. Looking forward to the visit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Rivera-Ovid.
Thank you for being here. I just want to wish Ms. Jones a very happy, well-deserved retirement. Thank you for all your years of service to our kiddos. Your advocacy has not been on deaf ears. And I think with COVID, we have seen an increase, a dramatic increase, with mental health needs with our children starting very early. So I truly appreciate that. And to Mrs. Schwartz, you've been here before, right, Mrs. Schwartz? Yes, so you have. That's what I thought, because I think I had asked our IT team last time to give us what our policy was or how we are doing data deletion, because one of the reasons why I remember your last testimony is because my niece, who was a middle schooler, was getting all these calls, and we were trying to figure out how they got her information. And then I had an aha moment when you were sitting there testifying, because I was like, how can they have an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, telling her that she can get a better credit card score. Like, how does that make sense? They don't even. So I just, I'm a huge believer in safeguarding our children's and even our staff's information. I don't know what kind of firewalls we have, but I think having a deletion process, if we can look at that, Dr. Taylor, that would be helpful, because it doesn't make sense to have a committee if we're not going to have a budget attached to it. That is very true. So, so thank you for your expertise and for agreeing to serve on that committee if we have one. And I just for Beers Mill, and I don't know how we are ratifying some of that this year, Dr. Taylor, but Beers Mill lost their status because we were not collecting the farm forms. And it was not just Beers Mill that was, it was actually 4 schools that, and Ms. Yang and I actually visited all of them. And so, and I'm still, I'm still heartbroken because I know the needs that a lot of these schools have and the challenges with the populations that we serve. So I don't know if we're going to have a clarification of how we're handling that, but I would truly appreciate that. And thank you so much for your advocacy. It's great to see you. And Monocacy Elementary School, I actually visited. It's really far, by the way, Monocacy Elementary School. It's, people are like, you actually went to Monocacy? I said, yep, so I sure did. It's such a great, such a great school, but it has also a large growing population of EML learners and other populations that, so I'm sure the staff and Dr. Taylor heard some of the requests. No,
so
I
say,
hear you.
Did you mention that they don't have a staff development teacher?
No.
But on the website, it has one listed.
So maybe the superintendent can follow.
Yeah, he will follow.
Yeah, we'll follow up. Okay. Really appreciate everyone for coming in. As a reminder, our next budget work session will be held on Thursday, January 23rd in the morning at 10 o'clock. That's where we will dive into the the discretionary funds in this budget proposal. And we have one more community hearing here and 4 more community budget information sessions out in the community. They're Wednesday, January 22nd at Seneca Valley, Tuesday, January 28th at Paint Branch High School, and Thursday, January 30th, it's virtual online. So a lot of opportunities for everyone to participate and learn more about the budget. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I would like to have a motion to adjourn the hearing.
Move to adjourn the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.